Today on the 10-12 podcast, myself and Chase Kiddy are discussing every Big 12 quarterback for the 2024 college football season. Yes, that includes Sheduer Sanders and Chase's crazy conspiracy theory about him and his father, Brendan Sorsby of Cincinnati, and why he belongs in his wife's sunroom, Garrett, Greene, Noah Fifita, Alan Bowman, and everybody else that will be throwing a pass in the Big 12 this season.
Greatness hurts. It's 10,000 hours of hard work, sweat, and setbacks. The aches, the stumbles, the falls. Tylenol provides pain relief for the champion in us all. It's the #1 doctor-recommended brand of pain relief and fever reduction. This summer, when greatness hurts, Tylenol will be there with care to help you keep chasing it. That's Tylenol. That's care without limits. Visit Tylenol.com/greatness-hurts to learn more. Use as directed.
It's the most magical time of the year, and I'm not talking about Christmas. I'm talking about the NFL season. So make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. Get the most live NFL games all in one place. Right now, you can save $85 when you bundle NFL Sunday Ticket with YouTube TV. Sign up today at youtubetv.com/Spotify. Device and content restrictions apply. Discount applied to first 4 months of YouTube TV, then $72.99 a month. Ends August 29th. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. No refunds.
Make sure you are ready for the 2024 college football season by going to our friends at charliehustle.com today and stocking up with all of the incredible gear that they have available for you. They've got every Big 12 school available, all 16. They just dropped Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah gear this summer. They've got more stuff coming down the line, and it is all fantastic. It is super comfortable. If you don't have the mascot t-shirt yet, go buy it today. Go to charliehustle.com, stack that cart up, and once you go to checkout, use the promo code 101215, TEN1215, for 15% off all non-sale items. Let me say that again, TEN1215, 15% off all non-sale items. Charlie Hustle loves the Big 12. They want you, Big 12 fans, to be the best dressed this season, whether you're at the game, at home, at the bar with friends. So make sure you are going to charliehustle.com, buying the best Big 12 gear for yourself this year. charliehustle.com. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh. Welcome to the 10-12, the podcast that covers all 16 teams in the Big 12 Conference. We are the flagship show of the 10-12 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Philip Slavin. Thank you for joining us on this Monday, assuming you're listening to this on the day that it drops. If not, happy whatever day it is for you. The season is almost here, and it feels like, I feel like a kid at Christmas, but not like Christmas Day, that 2 weeks before Christmas gets here, and you're just like, your entire body itches because you can't sit still, you're angsty. You remember, if you have kids, you see this, you remember. It's like PTSD when you see your kids do it. You're like, oh, that's sweet, but also like, ugh. Today, we are going to do something I don't normally do on the show. We're going to talk quarterbacks, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I am some quarterback aficionado guru. Look, playing quarterback is very, very hard. I don't even want to like armchair quarterback, but we're going to talk about Big 12 quarterbacks, because this might be the most interesting batch of quarterbacks we've had in a while in the Big 12. And it's not just there's 16. I'm going to keep reminding everybody, there's 16. If anyone's like, yes, I know what's going to happen in the Big 12 Conference. You mean the Big 12 Conference has been unpredictable for at least 4 years now, and now has a bunch of new teams in it? Cool, great. Anyways, but it feels like it's the deepest we've had at quarterback and the best collection of talent we've had at quarterback for a little while. So today, we're talking about Big 12 quarterbacks. And this isn't entirely my idea. My good friend who's joining us today, Chase Kiddy, was like, hey, we should talk Big 12 quarterbacks. And I said, you know what? Great. You're going to do the heavy lifting, and I'm just going to host this podcast. So, Chase, welcome back to the 10-12, friend.
Thank you. I am super excited to have this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for weeks. I want to talk about quarterbacks. I also want to unload on you here right at the top, something I've also been sitting on. I could have texted you this. I thought, no, let's get Philip's live reaction to this. So I've been sitting on this. Have you considered renaming the podcast network the 1612 Network so that 10% of your listeners think that this is a show about like a Jamestown famine? And not college football.
Every year I tell myself I'm going to change the network on April Fool's Day just to be part of the April Fool's Day jokes. But then we get to the day before April Fool's Day, and then I remembered that April Fool's Day jokes are dumb, and so I don't do it. We are not changing anything because I don't want to take the time to invest in changing the name. However, 1612, that was a good pun. It was a good joke.
How about 10, 14, 16, 12?
I've thought, okay, if I was going to, like, the joke has always been, like, we are now the 10, 12, 14, 16 network. And we have also purchased the rights to the domain 10, 12, 14, 16, 20, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20, 24. Any other version that might include future ACC teams joining the Big 12 Conference.
Cover all the bases.
So, yeah, you got to cover, and who knows what those teams would be. Not Florida State and no, they're not going to. Like Florida State and Clemson are not going to leave the ACC to join the Big 12. Like, or you're going to. We're not doing this. We're not doing real live.
That's another episode.
It is 9:15 God's time on a Sunday, and I have to be up early to take my. Chase is going to be a father soon, so I'm just going to warn you ahead of time now. The first week when you take your first kid to kindergarten, they will turn into an absolute monster at the end of the day every day. I love her to death, but she had her first 3 days of kindergarten. She's got her first week coming up. Let me just say this. Any parent out who the first week you took your kid to school, by the end of the day for the first week, and I know we've got at least another week of this, I love her to death. My child is possessed. She has become possessed. That is the way to describe her actions at the end of the day, because her body is so tired that she cannot control anything about herself. It's wonderful. So I'm ready to talk quarterbacks and then go to bed.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, you're 9:15 God's time. I'm +1 over here on the elite coast. So.
Well, then we should definitely get this out of the way before before your kids arrive at the end of the year, and then we don't see you for a while. Chase, we've got 16 quarterbacks, and I don't have. Here's the deal. I don't want to spend large quantities of time on all 16 teams because we still technically don't know the starters for 2 of them. I feel fairly confident about the starters of a couple of them. Let's knock out kind of the quarterback battles or the quarterback situations where we don't think it's going to be as big a deal. Before we get to that, just you pitched this. So why does the crop of Big 12 quarterbacks intrigue you so much this year?
Because it's bizarre. It's you've got a couple at the bottom that are just, it is what it is. And, I don't want to take too many cheap shots at BYU and Arizona State and a couple others, but it's a little rough. And I think those fans know that, so that's okay. There are 6 different guys that I considered when putting this list together. What I did is I bucketed them into tiers, and then I ranked everybody inside of the tiers. So I did a lot of unnecessary work here. And there's 6 different guys you can argue are the best quarterback in this conference. So that alone is unusual. There's also this middle class of guys that are maybe that guy could win Conference Player of the Year and compete for the Heisman. Maybe that guy will get that same guy. Maybe he'll be benched. I don't know. It's just it's such an unusual group of people. You've got people transferring in who could be awesome, or they could not start any games. So it's a super weird group. And I think I'm a little bit like you in that I'm not big on rankings. I'm not just chewing out like Google News content hoping to get clicks. But in this specific scenario, it is kind of a fascinating discussion to try to figure out the angles on all the different players and who is what and who slots in where.
Tiering is always better than ranking. Like
Yeah.
it just, but nobody wants to read an article called quarterback tiers. They want to read quarterback rankings. They want to complain because their quarterback should be 2 spots higher, And anyways, let's knock out some of the ones that you mentioned at the bottom, and just kind of get them out of the way. Arizona State technically is still a battle, but it does feel like Sam Leavitt is the guy who's going to get this job. I know there's two other guys in the race as well, but it really feels like this is Sam Leavitt and his job to lose. Look, some of this is like he could be good. The Michigan State transfer, like he could be. Looking at his numbers from very limited activity in 2023, like he was okay. Former 4-star recruit, but like part of this is also Arizona State. Like, even if he was awesome, like there's just so much limitation for him based off the state of this program right now. And I do think that they will take a step forward from last year, just stay healthy. But like, there's so many other problems for this team that like quarterback is just like, hey, cool. If you've got one, that's good. Like, I hope he doesn't suck, but
Yeah, it's a long rebuild. And I think Kenny Dillingham kind of wisely just said, we have so many problems to fix here. We just got to get bodies in. So they get Leavitt in the portal, and they get Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech and Nebraska. He portals in, and they need warm bodies. And I think they're still a year or two away from it kind of mattering who plays quarterback. So I totally agree with what you said. Even if Leavitt is good, this is still bad. So it kind of, it's almost irrelevant what is happening at quarterback there.
For BYU, Jake Retzlaff is the returner from last year. He started the last few games of the season for BYU, and he had some bright spots. He also threw a lot of interceptions that cost them some games. He was a real like up and down guy. Like you saw some really bright moments, and then you saw some really like freshman moments. And so it's him battling former USF, former Baylor quarterback Gerry Bohanon, who's in his 7th season. Let me just put 7th season. There are 3 7th season quarterbacks in the Big 12 this year. 2 of them that we will definitely be spending some time on here in a minute. But Gerry Bohanon, this is not a decided race. Gerry didn't even play for UCF or USF. Oh, don't let them hear if I say that. Oh, I'm going to get torn up. USF last season. So, and again, with BYU,
1-star reviews incoming.
Yeah, it's not gonna. How could you? I'm sorry, War on I-4, whatever. I don't know who to pick here. I think I lean Retzlaff, which is kind of like okay. I don't think it's a great situation to be BYU at quarterback. They have some other issues, but like I don't really know here.
I think it's going to be Bohanon, and I'm not sure how much that matters. I think you've identified the most important detail, which is no matter who wins, this is a bad quarterback situation. And it's kind of so bad that it might be like a fireable offense for Kalani Sitake to have let the situation get this poor. There's already kind of rumblings that he's a little bit of a hot seat candidate anyway. And I think not just the fact that the team was bad last year and may continue to be bad this year. It's one thing when you put the pieces together and the pieces don't work. This quarterback situation, it feels like you never got the pieces. And I think that's a really frustrating place for fans to be.
Yeah. Agreed. Any other spots where you're just like, doesn't matter? And I don't mean doesn't matter, but
kind of, yeah, doesn't matter.
Kind of doesn't matter. Be it the team or it's just a bad quarterback situation for you.
Yeah, my bottom bucket among the expected starters, because I kind of have a bonus bucket that maybe we'll touch on later of like, interesting guys not at the top of the 2 deep, but something interesting. My bottom bucket I called brutally but honestly not legitimate P4 starters, and it was BYU and Arizona State. So
okay, all right, we knocked that out. Well, we can move to the next bucket then.
Yep.
There is one other. I'm using air quotes, which you know, podcasting is a visual medium. Quarterback battle that is basically just we haven't announced the starter, which is Baylor, which is Toledo transferred to DeQuan Finn and Sawyer Robertson, who transferred from I think it was Mississippi State a year prior. This is DeQuan Finn's job. I don't understand why Dave Aranda is pulling a Lincoln Riley and telling us that there's a quarterback battle when it should be DeQuan Finn. Like, I think we saw enough Sawyer Robertson to be like, yeah, no, we're good here. We're good here. This should be DeQuan Finn's job. That's what he was brought into. He was brought in to be a more dynamic quarterback than what they had last year and to give them an option with the legs, which is what Baylor really needs in this offense. Baylor's got a lot of other stuff going on. And obviously Dave Aranda's on the hot seat here. I mean, I've watched a bit of Finn tape and I watched a little bit of Toledo. Like, I like DeQuan Finn. He's very much the like guy who on a team that we had higher expectations for would be getting a whole lot more buzz, but is on a team with a coach on the hot seat where we just don't have a lot of really high expectations for them. But he could do a lot of really good things for Baylor this year.
Yeah, I'm really high on Finn. I think he's probably going to, I imagine, win Baylor a game or maybe even 2 this season that they maybe don't deserve to win because a lot of the remaining pieces of the roster aren't quite as talented as he is. So I mean, that's a great get for them in the portal to get them the MAC Offensive Player of the Year. That's a huge deal. I'm skeptical of everything around him. And in that way, Finn kind of comps to another guy we're going to talk about later in the episode, which is Sheduer Sanders, where you know that there's talent at that quarterback spot on the team. You know that's one of the bright spots on the team, but a lot of the other pieces around it are liabilities, and that can sort of impact how you might view that central piece at quarterback.
All right, well, you know what? Just screw it. Let's hop into Colorado because I've thought of a question I want to ask you. Based off that statement you just made, who do you think currently has a more talented roster, Baylor or Colorado?
Oh, I'd probably give it to Colorado because the thing, I mean, the dialogue around Colorado is so ridiculous, right? But the thing you can say about Colorado is they have 2 or 3 players on that roster that are legitimately great top-end college players that are going to get drafted, not only in the first round, but in the top half of the first round. You can certainly say that about Travis Hunter. We could probably say that, I'm guessing, safely about Sanders at this point. Right or wrong, like, that's what happens with quarterbacks. When you're one of those quarterbacks and you get talked about in the draft this far in advance, you get a spiked value, whether it's reasonable or not. He's going to get drafted in the top 10. It's just how it goes. So I do think just that alone, regardless of how all the transfers they take in work out, some of them will, some of them won't. A lot of them probably won't. They have a couple pieces that Baylor just cannot match. And I think for that reason, I probably give the edge to Colorado.
Whoa. Okay, so then let's talk Sanders. Let's dive into one of the marquee names.
Can't wait.
In the Big 12 this year. I know you've got pages of notes.
I do.
Books of notes on Sanders. Look, I here's what I think of on Colorado's roster before you dive in. And I do think that They, again, when it comes to transfer portal, if you get a 50% success rate on the transfers you bring in, your transfer class, that is a really good transfer portal class.
Sure.
I do think they improved the roster from a starting standpoint. I do think that the starting roster this year is better than last year. Still not sure, including on the defensive line. Not sure about the offensive line. We'll see. But the depth is still just not there on this roster. It's not. You take all that into effect for Colorado. We saw Sheduer Sanders basically, had to do everything on offense last year. I still don't know if Sheduer Sanders is good. Let me start by saying Sheduer Sanders is good. I don't know if he's as good as we're being told he is, because it's so hard to fairly judge him because of how bad the roster was last year, especially at offensive line, where I don't know if we're even going to really see the true Sheduer Sanders during his time at Colorado.
Yeah. This is a player who was sacked on 10% of his dropbacks last year. That is insane. That's a fake stat. That seems like it can't be real, but it was. And a lot of that's the offensive line's fault, right? Because it was a really bad offensive line. That there's some positions you can build through the portal. It's really hard because of the way offensive lines come together, because it's not necessarily an individual player. It's a unit. You need time to practice together and be coached and train and gel. And that takes time. You can't just assemble it on paper via the portal. And that's what they tried to do last year. It's what they've tried to do again this year. So yes, it was really bad last year. I kind of think it will continue to struggle this year, especially in the first half of the season. But some of that is on Sheduer too, because he holds on to the ball too long. And, you don't have to be like Captain Tape to know this. Like, everybody kind of understands this and talks about it. He is a good player. It's one of the things that is most commonly pointed to as, oh, that's something he needs to work on. You hear people speculate that, well, maybe he's holding on to it because he cares too much about his completion percentage. Obviously, I don't know if that's the case. If it is, like, you gotta work on that, man. Like, you gotta not care so much about the stats. But yeah, he's a good quarterback in this league. He's one of the 6 guys that I thought to myself, is this guy the best quarterback in the league? Ultimately, I said no, but he's in that top class. He's probably going to be the top draftee, but I think a lot of college fans understand. In terms of the quarterbacks in this league, he's probably going to be the top quarterback drafted in the Big 12. But I think a lot of college football fans intuitively understand, just because you're the top quarterback prospect in a league doesn't make you the top quarterback in that conference, because there are college quarterbacks and there are NFL quarterbacks. And I think just because you are on pace to be something in the future doesn't automatically make you the best thing in a conference.
Look, if you look at his numbers from last year, and I don't mean the like completion percentage was 69%. Like, it was really good. Only 3 picks.
Good. Yeah. Good.
PFF had him as the second highest graded quarterback in the Big 12 last year, out of the 16 quarterbacks who were in the Big 12 this year.
Can't wait to talk about that number 1 quarterback, Philip.
Yeah, I know you are. The EPA wasn't very good. That's the biggest knock on him. And of course, his rushing yards are negative 77, but the sacks play into that. His QBR was middle of the pack. His rating, which is ESPN stuff, was pretty good. And so I come away thinking, I do think this is a good quarterback. I just don't. Colorado is going. Colorado is going to win games because of Sheduer Sanders.
Yes.
And if he can clean up some of the stuff, new OC, we'll see if it fits better. Colorado's going to have a better season. So, he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. If nothing else, he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm not here to, trash on Sheduer Sanders. It's not, as far as the NFL goes, the expectations, it's not a very good quarterback class coming out this year. So,
yeah,
cool.
Let me give some more pessimistic Sheduer takes.
Bring it.
He was really good last year. And it's hard. First of all, just in terms of a like finding your own level thing, I'm kind of skeptical you can post those numbers again if you have the same kind of systemic problems that you do. Like you take that many hits, most of the time you're going to get hurt. And so my number one concern is that he's going to take a bunch more hits, and this time he's going to get hurt. And now that you know, hey, he's in the draft next year, right? There's not another year at Boulder. Like he's getting drafted in the spring of 2025. If you take a lot of hits, maybe he has like a little boo-boo late September. He has maybe a more serious injury late October, early November. You start thinking about, should we shut this guy down, right? Should we protect his future interests? That's something I would worry about if you're Colorado. I want to go another level deeper though, and I don't think I've heard anybody say this, so I'm gonna rampantly speculate. I'm gonna offer you a little theory here. As a man from Boston occasionally says, turn the TikTok camera on because this is gonna go somewhere. I have a feeling.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is,
"Thank you for calling. Please listen to your list of 46 possible service options."
which is why when you choose USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable. 24/7 online service for claims, access to roadside assistance, and more. All at the touch of a button. Start getting the service you deserve. Get a quote today. Ability to receive a quote depends on membership eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
A few months ago, Deion Sanders was on a podcast called $1 Million Worth of Game. He said if a team he doesn't like wants to draft Sheduer, he's going to advise him to pull an Eli. Meaning, for our younger listeners, just say, oh, you can draft me, but I'm not going to sign with you. You're just going to have to waste a draft pick. You kind of leverage your way into looking off a team from drafting you the same way you might look off a safety. Still quoting here, Deion, I know where I want them to go, so it's certain cities that ain't going to happen, which is kind of interesting. Deion thinks he and Sheduer can force an NFL team's hand. Caleb Williams had kind of heard some speculation about some of this last year. I think that was more bravado than actual meat. Like I don't think Caleb Williams
that was his dad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but this is Sheduer's dad, right? It's kind of a father-son dynamic. It's a different one, but there is some father speaking to the media to create, this veiled threat kind of thing, that there are similarities there. I do think the Sanders family would attempt something like this if they didn't like their situation. But what is the situation that they want? And this is where the sort of the theory crafting comes in. Sheduer Sanders went to Trinity Christian in Cedar Hill, Texas for high school, 2017 to 2020. Who was his OC at Trinity Christian? His father, Deion. Sheduer committed to Jackson State, played there 21-22. You know who his head coach was there? His father, Deion. Sheduer transferred to Colorado for 2023, where he's now playing as a draft-eligible senior. As you know, his father, Deion, is the head coach. Have you seen the coaching staff for Colorado this year? Have you looked at it at all? Former Bengals coach Robert Livingston, now the defensive coordinator. Former Giants and Browns head coach Pat Shurmur, now the OC. Former Vikings lineman Phil Loadholt, new offensive line coach. Former NFL receiver Jason Phillips, coach of the receivers. Warren Sapp is an analyst for this team. I initially kind of read this the same as everybody else. He wants to emphasize how he can create an NFL pipeline by bringing in real NFL coaches. If you are truly trying to build a program, though, I don't know if overloading your staff with NFL guys like that, who aren't primarily experienced with the college game, gets you to the promised land. The Warren Sapp thing is super weird. He's a Hall of Famer, all-timer. You know what an offensive analyst makes at the University of Colorado? He is basically volunteering. Why would he do that? Why would any of these guys do this? Leave the NFL to go work for Colorado. At best, you're like coaching a 500 team in the Big 12. I think when you put all the pieces together here, I think they're going to move up to the NFL together. I think they have this planned where they can leverage, there's going to be a team that needs both a coach and a quarterback. Those are sometimes they correlate together. They're correlated outcomes. You suck because you don't have a quarterback, and then your coach gets fired because your team sucks. So if you watch the NFL this year, the Jets, the Steelers, the Raiders, the Giants, the Vikings, the Saints, Las Vegas and New Orleans in particular could be bad teams with a high draft pick in need of a coach in January. They agree to hire DeQuan, who then takes his entire Colorado staff and directly transplants them into the NFL where they are already qualified to work. He uses that high pick on Sheduer. It's kind of brilliant. It's kind of elegant. It's definitely memorable. I think this might happen. And I think it's relevant in a conversation about Big 12 quarterbacks because if they have this massive plan to move on together, they don't care about Colorado. Like when it's week 9, they have a plan. The plan is we get to the NFL together. We protect Sheduer's health. DeQuan doesn't care if this is the plan. DeQuan doesn't care if they finish 3-9 versus 5-7. The plan is protect the draft assets. And I think that kind of matters in the context of availability. So I don't know how much of that theory is shoehorned into this conversation and how much is like directly relevant, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot in terms of like, do you want to get involved with Sheduer Sanders futures? Do you want to get involved with Colorado futures? I think there's a lot of potential outcomes where Colorado is totally shut down and kind of in a very weird place the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. And I think that matters in conversations like this.
So are we predicting future New York Giant head coach Deion Sanders or future Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach Deion Sanders?
I think the Raiders and the Saints are the two.
But Raiders just got just promote a new head coach.
Yeah, he's got some weird financial. I don't know how much you've read about the Antonio Pierce stuff going on in Las Vegas right now. There's some weird financial stuff with him. And I would not be surprised if he is gone at the end of this year. Okay. I think the Saints would be my number one pick because Dennis Allen is, he was kind of a retread to begin with. They were kind of treading water with Derek Carr to begin with. And I think if they flounder, I mean, now we're getting into NFL talk, but like if they flounder in an NFC South that's pretty winnable, this is arguably the worst division in the NFL, and they can't get past 6-11. I think there's just going to be a clean house. Let's bring in something new. And I think Sanders, he was just at Jackson State 2 years ago in an adjacent state. Like I think he would resonate as a potential coach of the Saints with his son playing quarterback. And maybe they make some kind of crazy deal and end up getting Travis Hunter too, which would be really interesting. Because technically, if you go back and read those comments he made about pulling Eli Manning, he was speaking about both Sanders and Travis Hunter. Maybe he was just talking extemporaneously, but maybe he does have this grand vision on these two really high level talents that are on his team.
Oh,
it's interesting.
Oh, this is fun.
I'm sure I got a lot wrong there. It's total projection and guessing, but I do think the pieces kind of line up.
If this happens, you can come on and get your flowers. I'll just say that. Because because the whole thing has always been like, what is Deion going to do when his son and Travis aren't there? Like, we'll see. Okay. Any other? Who are the quarterbacks? Let's backtrack a little bit. Who are the quarterbacks? What we'll call your not bottom tier, but the next tier up that we have yet to talk about so far.
Sure, I call this bucket 3 replacement level quarterbacks. So, let's start here. Let's talk about your boy Allen, because I have him in this bucket, and
seventh year college football quarterback. Alan Bowman.
I just want to give you the floor to talk about Alan Bowman.
I was fine when they brought him in, when the original pitch was we're going to do some combination of like Oklahoma State offense and Michigan offense, and Alan Bowman knows that. And look, he's an experienced guy. It was fine last year. The more teams focused on shutting down Ollie Gordon and putting it on Alan Bowman made some egregious throws. That's why his touchdown to interception ratio was 15-14 by the end of last season. So like it's fine. It's fine. Like it's fine. He's middle of the pack quarterback in the Big 12. Like if you think he's bottom half, that's fine. I don't think anybody outside of Stillwater is going to be like, nah, he's top half quarterback in the Big 12. I think he's fine. Yeah. At this point, it's just try not to throw the ball over. Try not to turn the ball over so much this year. That'd be great.
I do think this bucket could be called sigh. It's fine. Because that's like, kind of where they are.
I don't care. Whatever. It's not like anybody listens to the show that's going to be like, hey, Alan, you want to hear what Philip said about you? I was fine with it last year. I'm not thrilled for another year. I'll be honest. Like I was really hoping at this point, either Garrett or Zane Flores would show enough ability and to come in and increase the ceiling of the passing offense. I feel like he's had another offseason with the team and he's a 7th-year quarterback. Like you know exactly what he is. If you think that we're going to see 25. Some brand new, like we're no, we're going to see a whole new Alan Bowman. No, we know who Alan Bowman is. We saw Alan Bowman last year. That's who you're going to get. Like it just, maybe he has a little bit of a better relationship. Dude took all his receivers out to California last year in the offseason to work with him. Like I don't like it. You know who he is. Okay. Like you know exactly who he is. It's what was it? 74.8, which is like middle of the pack, big mess middle from PFF last year. His EPA was 47.7. It's not good. His QBR was 68.7. It's not bad, but it's fine. Like it 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. At the end of the day, that's the thing where I watched enough Alan Bowman last year to be like, okay, I didn't need a second year, but that's what we got.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy to talk about right after Sheduer because he's kind of the anti-Sheduer in a lot of ways. Sheduer is a talented, athletic quarterback on a bad team, and he carries them forward. Bowman is a totally forgettable quarterback on a good team, right? And he in a lot of ways draws them back. It's kind of remarkable that you would find. I have him in my 3rd bucket, and I have him ranked 13th overall. Now, as an Oklahoma State fan, you might tell me, hey, I've watched more Oklahoma State than you. That's a little too low, and I would maybe concede that. But in general, to find him this low on the list is kind of shocking, given that Oklahoma State's a real, legitimate conference contender. Like, if Oklahoma State had, I don't know, Avery Johnson or Finn, who we already talked about, like, wouldn't they probably be the favorite this year?
Yes.
So I think they would be. So Bowman brings the team back.
Okay, I'm just going to say this. OSU has kind of messed around and not done a good job at quarterback since they brought Spencer Sanders in.
Yeah.
I like Spencer Sanders. He had his locker room stuff. He ended up finishing his career as a backup at Ole Miss. Like that, like they got Spencer Sanders, and like I'm sorry, like every time it's like we got a 4-star quarterback, I'm like, okay, like that's great, but every time you bring a 4-star in, you seem to whiff on them. Like I don't know if it's a lack of development at quarterback. I don't know if it's a bad evaluation. I don't know if it's the fact that your wide receiver coach is your OC. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but they have, like, for a team that had Brandon Whedon and Zach Robinson and Mason Rudolph, and I mean, heck, even to some extent, Spencer Sanders. Like,
it's noticeable. Yeah, it's historically noticeable.
Feels like a bit of a whiff the last few years, and I think they might have moved Spencer Sanders earlier, given the off-field and the locker room stuff, had they had anybody that they could replace him with.
Yeah,
but that's me. That is purely me theorizing. I just,
I'll stamp it with this, and then we can move on to somebody else. I really think, again, I'm talking to somebody who watched a lot more Oklahoma State than I did. So, you correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I really feel like I almost think Gordon won Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12 last year because of how mediocre Bowman was. Almost like down the stretch, they were like, we have to feed this, we have to run the offense through Gordon, through the ground game. And that created so much opportunity for him. And he took advantage of it, obviously, because he's a great running back. That is what propelled, down. I mean, I think there was a time late in week 12 where Gordon was third in the Heisman table. Now, he was never going to win it.
No,
but
he's a running back.
But the fact that he got that close to the top of the table, even, I think, is a function of how they were running the offense, which was kind of running it away from the quarterback position, which on a Gundy team is bizarre.
Yeah, but also Gundy's favorite season of all time was the year that they finished with the exact same number of rushing and passing yards. If you tell me he finishes anywhere between the 8th and 13th best quarterback in the Big 12, it wouldn't shock me, and I wouldn't argue with you about that whatsoever.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Okay, who else is in this? You know what? I have to imagine Brendan Sorsby is in this group for Cincinnati, right?
He is. Yeah, Sorsby's in this group. And I think Sorsby's fine.
Yeah.
He's a potted plant. He's like, okay, got it. Know what that does? It's there.
Are we talking like Fern, or are we talking like Little Shop of Horrors?
We're talking, I'm going to walk downstairs into my wife's sunroom, and there will be several potted plants there, and they slightly add to the ambiance of the room. And that is essentially Brendan Sorsby. I actually think he showed some stuff. Look, Indiana was dreadful last year. The end of Tom Allen, Indiana, was bad. And the fact that he was sort of average as the whole house was falling down around him, I actually think is sort of quietly impressive. I thought the last month or so, he was pretty even good last year. So I do think Sorsby to Cincinnati, if you want to look at things with an optimistic lens, year 2 of Satterfield, it could be okay. But if your ceiling is okay, and that's your ceiling, yeah, you're in the double digits of this quarterback conversation that we're having. You're closer to the bottom than the top.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's nice to say that I think Cincinnati this year is better than Indiana was last year. I think the roster's better. Now I'm a little bit worried about the defensive line and the number of guys they keep losing left, right, and sideways.
Yep.
And I'm not wowed by the wide receiving core, but Sorsby can move. He can pick up some yards with his legs. He's a competent enough quarterback, and so he's not the kind of guy I'm he's gonna win you games. I also don't think he's necessarily going to lose them games either. He's going to go out there, he's going to play quarterback for them, and it's going to be wins and losses are going to be determined by how does the team play as a whole, and does issues at the defensive line or just a lack of marquee pass catchers really bring this team down. So I think that's fine. I think that's fair. Who else is in this group for you?
Morton. Not a Morton fan.
It's Morton time, man. Come on. It's Morton time. That's what we say here at the 1012 podcast.
Not a Morton fan.
I will hang on to my Morton stock, but I will not believe he is actually healthy until I see him out there game one looking like a healthy quarterback. Texas Tech, it's so hard to project them this year for me at this point because it's entirely dependent on, is Behren Morton healthy or not? Because if he's 100% healthy, if he really is healthy and all the weirdness of the offseason was just an overblown weirdness, like I like him enough to say like Texas Tech could have a good season. If he's not healthy, I don't like the backup. I think is like Cameron Brown,
who transferred from West Georgia, which is a D2 program that I believe is trying to transition to FCS.
Yeah, like we're talking 0-star, third year, 54% completion, 914 passing yards, 470. Like nothing. Like okay, like cool. Like Also, speaking of places quarterback issues, Texas Tech. I wish they could have a healthy quarterback for full season. It'd be great for them. I like his potential, but I don't know if he's healthy.
Yeah, and I don't either. And that was factored into my putting him down here of like, it's the vibes are real weird.
Gosh, yeah.
And even if he is healthy, I'm not sold on him. Now, others might disagree, but me combining the fact that I'm not sold on him healthy and I'm not sure he's healthy, it's a pretty bad combination.
Fair. Agreed. I like him. I like him healthy, and that's fine. I will. I'll carry that torch and believe that, like, him healthy to me is worth a couple wins for Texas Tech. Like that. I just now. Luckily, they've got Taj Brooks, and so you can do a lot with Taj Brooks, and what should be a decent offensive line, I think. But you still need a healthy quarterback. All right. Anybody else in this group? Let me see. Is there anybody else? Don't tell me who it is. If there is, I want to guess.
I have two guys that I think could go in either this bucket or the next bucket, and I kind of throughout the last few days I've moved them back and forth several times.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess one of them is Donovan Smith at Houston.
Correct.
Okay. Former Texas Tech quarterbacks that I can't quit. I just can't freaking quit. Like when he is good, he's really good. When he's not good, he's really not good.
Yeah.
And there
super high variance. Yeah.
Yes, and he has never been able to establish, and he started that way in his first season at Texas Tech. And I was like, the ceiling felt so high because his high points were awesome, his low points are awful, and there's just never been any sort of middle ground consistency from him. And you throw it into, and I think Willie Fritz is a hell of a coach. I think they're going to craft a system where he will have as much success as he can. But I just it's year one at Houston with the new coaching staff. I think when he's bad, this team might be really bad. And I think when he's good is it going to be will Houston be able to take advantage of his really good moments and turn them into wins? And I don't know if they can overcome the bad Donovan Smith games.
Yeah, and I think all that's fair. You probably read the same reports that I have that there are some people that think Donovan Smith is like an NFL quarterback, and I'm thinking, I don't know what you're watching. I mean,
highlight reel. They're just watching the good stuff.
Yeah, it's you can't just judge a body and sometimes mechanics and be like, oh yeah, that guy definitely plays on Sunday, because you don't just get to go out there and have a good series one or two times in the NFL. You have to be consistent. And he's just not. So I agree with you. I mean, Willie Fritz came into Tulane and almost immediately made it really good, right? Now, the depth in the American, very different than the depth in the Big 12. So I am skeptical that he can have that big of a swing right away at Houston. But if he's going to do it, I think a lot of it starts with fixing the Donovan Smith problem, right? And making him more consistent. And I think there's a couple interesting observations that I would make about that. Number one is, I can speak with some degree of clarity on Dana Holgerson's pluses and minuses as a coach. And, he doesn't always have patience for, fix up jobs and small details.
No, yeah.
Holgerson himself is a very inconsistent guy. So I could see a different head coach and a different program, fixing a lot of those inconsistencies. I would say the other thing is Willie Fritz brought in Zeon Chris from Louisiana, and I wonder if Chris is going to push Donovan Smith for that starting job. And that's not a quarterback battle that you and I have talked about, and it's not one that's been talked about a lot, I think, in the media, at least from what I've read. But I would not be surprised if after like a couple of really inconsistent games, we see somebody else get a shot there, because I think Chris is really talented and definitely more consistent.
Okay, that's one to keep an eye on then. Well, and if Donovan Smith can't stay healthy, then he'll get a shot. You said 2. I'm gonna guess Josh Hoover. TC.
Correct again.
Okay.
Yeah. Hoover isn't bad, right? He's fine.
It's the crowd cheering. Sorry, go ahead.
I think Hoover could be good. The problem is, he hasn't played a ton. So you got a small sample size that I think is a problem for a couple of guys here that we got to grade, especially one that we haven't talked about yet, who's got an even smaller sample size than Hoover. My suspicion is that Hoover is fine, that he will be able to execute TCU's offense, but that he is not quite as good as many of the other guys that we're going to talk about.
I think that's fair. Look, he was a freshman last year. He's a sophomore this year. Like, we'll see. I need to see a step up from him, and I don't entirely believe in their offensive coordinator. So,
if I was doing a slightly more fair and less rigid version of this list, I would have a new tier, I think, just called We'll See. And Hoover would belong more closely, I think, in that tier, because just got to see a little more.
I think he's one where I don't know. I don't even feel good like judging him at this point, because I don't know. If he came out this year and was really good, I wouldn't be totally shocked. If he came out this year and was like meh, like I wouldn't be totally shocked there either. So I think that's a perfect way to transition to the other purple team, and the guy you hinted at, who has the smallest sample size, and yet everyone is absolutely positive is going to win 3 straight Heismans, at least in Manhattan, Kansas. That would be Avery Johnson.
Yeah. Right.
Who this is my whole, I get Kansas State being like preseason number 2, but we haven't seen enough. Like, he hasn't played a whole season. How many times have we done we see a guy for a small amount of time and he's awesome, and then he actually has to go out there and start for a full season? Oh, by the way, you brought a ton back on defense. You're replacing almost your entire offensive line. Yes, they've all played snaps. I get it. It's not the same as starting every game. I see it. I absolutely see it. I get why everyone's talking about him. I get why everyone's excited about him, especially at Kansas State. I get why national media is picking up on all the Avery Johnson buzz. I'm just very much okay, well, let's see what he looks like. Let me see 3 weeks of non-conference before I'm ready to crown him the best quarterback in the Big 12. I need to see that. I get it. They feel really high about him. That's basically why you ran Will Howard off to go be the starter for Ohio State. Enjoy a Big 12 backup as the starter of Ohio State. Cool. I'm not even going to get into the Will Howard comments about Ohio State versus Kansas State. Dude, they ran you off from Kansas State. Okay, man. Yeah, it's Kansas State's fault that you had to do so much. I get all of it. I'm not here to dog Avery Johnson. I just want to, like, I need 3. Can I have 3 games before I crown him? Am I allowed to have that? Is that okay for me to not have a strong opinion about him right this second?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, okay, he had a 91.3 QBR in 2023. Solid dual threat quarterback, storied tradition of dual threat quarterbacks at Kansas State. I still have nightmares about Colin Klein just obliterating West Virginia's defense for a game I was at in 2012. So I like him. If he was a house, we would say he has good bones. Like we like what we have seen. But he threw 66 passes last year. He had less than 500 yards. So if you are evaluating this honestly, you would say there's not that much difference between Avery Johnson and Josh Hoover because they're both decent guys. They're both young, and they both haven't played a lot. Now, the difference between Johnson and Hoover, as I see it, and as I've organized my list here, is that when I watch them, I think Johnson looks a little better than Hoover. So I have Johnson at 9th overall in bucket 2, and I have Hoover at 11th overall in bucket 3. But there's not a lot of daylight in between them.
Like I can. He is a dynamic runner. His legs are very useful. Like I can sit here and nitpick. Like he didn't throw that many passes. He had a 56% completion rate last year. Let me name you all the quarterbacks in the Big 12 this year who had a higher completion rate. It does not include Garrett Greene. Cam Rising 2 years ago, KJ Jefferson last year, Behren Morton last year, Josh Hoover last year, Alan Bowman, Jalon Daniels, Rocco Becht, Donovan Smith, Sheduer Sanders, DeQuan Finn.
Yeah. I mean, look, like, Avery Johnson might be really good.
Sam, Noah Fifita, like, yeah, but
the
like
8 guys above him are good, established guys that have real resumes. You cannot, I mean, I'm all for projecting, right? Everything to some extent is a projection. You can't project a guy with 400 career passing yards over conference player of the years and like NFL draft prospects. And like, you can't do that. So he might be really good. Kansas State might win the conference behind his great quarterback play, but on August 18th, he's got to be like in the middle of the pack because the guys above him are too good and too established.
Kansas State fans have been jacked about him since he committed. So like it's not a shot at Kansas State fans. Like, be excited about your guy. It's awesome. Yeah. I love it. I hope he's good. I really do. Like, I hope he's good. And Kansas State's awesome with him there. And they go kick a bunch of ass in the playoff, and everyone's like, "Oh wow!" And Avery Johnson's in New York for the Heisman. Like, I would love all that for the Big 12, Kansas State. Like, it'd be great. But like, can I have 3 games? Can I have 3 games, please? Okay. So you mentioned the next. What is the next group? And we talked about Hoover, and we talked about Smith there, kind of bouncing back and forth between. What is this next group called?
Yeah, bucket 2 I've labeled as perfectly fine. So solid starters, effective.
Okay.
We like them. Are they going to compete to be the best in the conference? Probably not. Are they going to be offensive player of the year in the conference? Probably not. But they're good. We think they're good. That's kind of how I envision this second group.
Let me guess. How many are in this group?
3
that we have not
including Johnson.
Okay. So Avery Johnson, there's 3. Okay. So
I have Avery Johnson at the bottom of this group, and there's 2 more guys. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go. Ooh, this might have hurt you, didn't it? Garrett Greene.
And one of these guys we've already talked about. That's in this group. So I'll just give you that one. Finn. I have Finn in this group.
Okay. So Finn's in this group. Yeah. Johnson in this group. Hoover and Smith, you've gone back and forth between this group or the lower group. Okay. If there's one guy on this list, this might be one where we really differ. I'm going to guess it's either Garrett Greene or KJ Jefferson.
Let me pause you right there just to give you one more piece of context that'll help you.
Okay.
Bucket number 1, I have labeled in competition for best quarterback in the Big 12.
And that's going to have one.
And that's got
5
different players in it.
6. Oh, and Sheduer's one of them. Right. So
Sheduer's
5 we
one
haven't
of them.
mentioned, and Sheduer's one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's one guy who doesn't fit in that. I'm going to guess it's either Garrett, Greene, or KJ Jefferson.
Rocco Becht.
Okay. All right. I'm fine. Okay, that's fine. I'm fine with that one too. Like that. All right.
Freshman of the year last year. I think he's good.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's good specifically at running Iowa State's system. I think he could be a future all-conference awardee. I like Becht. I just don't think I would take him, youth and other considerations. I don't think I would take him over the 6 guys in the first tier.
Okay. All right. Iowa State fans are like, tell me more about Rocco Becht. I'm going to go, okay, well, we're going to move on. I'm fine with that. Like, he had a good first season. Like, he did. I expect him to take a step forward. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's
circle back to something we talked about near the beginning. The 6 guys in this first group. I genuinely think you could make a case for any of these 6 guys as like, I'm betting that guy to be Big 12 Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year. I think
I like it.
All 6 of these guys have a case. So, I have my ordering and I have my notes and my thoughts. I do not think there are wrong answers in this group.
I think that's fine. Let's start with the one who I get why he's in this group, but he could also be in the group below because he may not play the whole season, and that'd be Jalon Daniels.
Jalon Daniels. Yeah. He has the talent to be the top guy on the list, right?
Yes,
if you're telling me he's going to play 12 games this season, I would tell you
Kansas is in Arlington.
I would tell you Kansas, go bet him to win the conference at plus 900. I'd say go bet Jalon Daniels to win the Heisman at 30-1. If you're guaranteeing me 12 games, those are good bets. The problem is he's probably not going to play 12 games.
Nope.
And, I want to be fair here, but like he played 3 games last year. He played 8 games in 2022. He played 6 games in 2021. He played 7 games in 2020. He averages 6 games a year. He averages missing half the season. That's his average. Sometimes he plays less than that. So Jalon Daniels is awesome. Everybody loves Jalon Daniels. We hope he stays healthy because it's awesome to watch Jalon Daniels. He hasn't stayed healthy. And I think you have to be a big believer in availability as an ability. And
yes,
he doesn't have it.
No, that you have to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care how talented you are when you're healthy. If you're never healthy, it doesn't matter. And I hate it. I do. Back stuff. Like, God, it's frustrating as someone who enjoys, like, I don't know how you watch him and don't enjoy watching him play and want to see him play. Now, I get it. Like, you'd love for him to miss the game against your team. But, like, I want to watch him. I hope he stays healthy. I just don't believe he will because it's a back issue. And I like everything you also hear out of, like, Kansas, like, the things that aren't said, just like I don't believe he'll play the whole season.
Yeah, and to zoom out, they don't have Jason Bean anymore.
No,
so,
and I don't want to hear about like, well, we have to. No, like don't saying anything. Like, do not besmirch Jason Bean by pretending like anyone can come in and be a Jason Bean level back.
Yeah, Jason Bean was great, and he was great, and he had a different skill set than Jalon Daniels. So you got to do really interesting things. Leipold did with the Kansas offense when they would switch them back and forth, and that stressed opposing defenses in terms of how they had to game prep. So it was an asset to have that qualified, that effective of a backup. I'm not sure Kansas has that this year. So there is going to be more weight than ever on that Jalon Daniels health situation.
All right, I'm going to let you talk about the guy with the highest PFF grade last year in the Big 12. But a low EPA, a decent rating, quarterback rating, and a solid QBR. But who had just a 53% completion rate.
Yes.
Last year.
Only one quarterback, as you're alluding to, from the 2024 Big 12, graded out as a top 20 quarterback from PFF. 10.2% big time throw rate. Highest mark in FBS. He ranked 20th in QBR at 75.8, 28 total touchdowns, 4 interceptions. We are, of course, talking about my guy Garrett Greene at West Virginia. I think he belongs in this category. I don't think I would get a ton of pushback. I do think I would get pushback for where in the category he belongs, because I think he belongs closer to 1 than 6. I listened to a lot of quarterback rankings for the Big 12 when I was putting a lot of my notes together for this episode, and I was pretty shocked how overlooked he was. I think part of it is the West Virginia equation, that West Virginia is a little bit overlooked. I think in hindsight, they are seen fairly as a team that succeeded because of their schedule last year, that Greene's numbers were a product of that schedule. And so this year, with some regression to the mean in terms of scheduling luck, you're going to see a less effective or a less impressive Garrett Greene. I'm not entirely sure that's true. I think that's a totally fair thing to believe, but I'm not entirely sure that that's true. I really think when you look at the numbers, he rates near the top. You mentioned the accuracy, his completion percentage. It's low. It's not just low by college standards. It's not just low by good quarterback standards or good Power 4 quarterback standards. It's low pretty much by any standard you can imagine. But I think that's a function of how he plays. And, to offer some comparison here, I struggled going back and forth with Garrett Greene and Noah Fifita. Who do I want to rank higher, Greene or Fifita? And in some ways, they kind of play off each other because Fifita is so consistent, middle of the field, super high completion rate, manages risk, stays in the pocket, and Greene's the total opposite. He's big time plays. Again, I'll mention 10.2% big time throw rate from Garrett Greene, according to PFF, highest mark in FBS. He is a gunslinger. He is a true dual threat. So he goes for the big plays, whereas Fifita is, I don't want to call him a check down guy, but he's much more consistent and much more low risk. So if you're giving me those two guys, in some ways, I want the risk that Greene provides, and his accuracy stuff and his completion rate numbers are sort of a function of that. I think he still has work to do. I think he still throws way too many uncatchable balls on easy throws. And my guess is you're going to see a big improvement in that part of his game this year. But I absolutely think he has been deeply underrated in conversations about this. When you're done listening to us talk about this, go listen to other podcasts, do the whole Big 12 quarterback ranking, top 5 Big 12 quarterback ranking. He's nowhere to be found. Nobody's talking about him. And I think given his statistical profile and his on-field play and his dual threat nature, I think that's really wrong.
No, I agree. Greene is way underrated. But West Virginia is underrated to some extent.
Yes.
You don't. Their running backs are underrated because 3 guys run the ball. So you don't get C.J. Donaldson or Jaheim White talked about in the same way you do. And I'm not saying they're as good as Taj. They might be as good as Taj Brooks. They might be as good as Ollie Gordon.
But if you put them together in the aggregate,
But when you have all 3 of those guys running the ball, and then you look at the stats for Garrett Greene, and you say, it just doesn't match up with everybody else. Yeah. So I do think he is good. I do think if he can be a more balanced quarterback and not just a gunslinger, West Virginia's offensive ceiling goes through the roof.
Yeah.
Because I know the rushing attack is going to be really good. I know the offensive line is going to be solid. I think the wide receivers should be okay. The other thing, if you're comparing those, Fifita having Tetaroa, there's not a wide receiver remotely that is anywhere near. And I like Jaden Bray as an OSU fan. He never quite.
But Tetaroa is that's Calvin Johnson. I mean, he's
if Garrett Greene had a Tetaroa on that roster, I'm gonna put it right now. If Garrett Greene, if there was a Tetaroa, if there was we're talking surefire Bolitnikoff like contender on West Virginia's roster this year,
Right.
we would be having a very, very, very different conversation about West Virginia.
And one of the thought experiments I kind of put together when I was doing my notes for this episode was, if you lined up Garrett Greene and Sheduer Sanders and asked 100 college football fans, which guy would you rather have? 100 college football fans would say Sanders.
Correct. All right, that leaves us with 2. And I'm excited about it being these 2. I'm going to save the one I want to talk about last for last. So let's talk Cam Rising.
Okay.
I get a lot of pushback from people who talk about the Jalon Daniels injury issue as a reason we should be concerned for him, but not Cam Rising, who didn't play at all last season. Should we be concerned about Cam Rising injury issue? Why is Jalon Daniels pegged this way and Cam Rising doesn't seem to get talked about as an injury concern in any way, shape, or form? And there is some validity to that argument of, we haven't seen a healthy Cam Rising play quarterback for the Utah for more than a calendar year now. But I don't feel like Cam, I view like missing a season isn't the same as like consistently year in, year out missing games.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% correct. We should talk about the fact that Cam Rising didn't play last year and that he's recovering from an ACL tear, right? That's relevant.
Yes.
He's great. He's also recovering from an ACL tear. He won 2 conference championships at Utah. Relevant. He might not be the same guy. Also relevant. But none of those things also mean he has the track record of Jalon Daniels, which is hasn't finished a season yet.
Correct.
So, I mean, put all that together, he obviously belongs in this group. But I also don't feel like he has the upside of some of these other guys, even if he wasn't coming off the ACL tear. I think he's a great leader. I think he's a great winner. I don't think he's the reason Utah wins, you know? Utah wins because Whittingham's a great coach and they have excellent play at the line of scrimmage and they're really tough. And the good quarterback play is what brings it all together and makes them the favorite to win the league, makes them in the mix for the playoff berth. But is Cam Rising, like if Cam Rising won the Heisman, I think that'd be pretty shocking. Because I don't see him as having a ceiling that goes that high. Whereas some of these other guys in this group, I do think have a ceiling. If Jalon Daniels won the Heisman, that would not be that shocking. He has the talent to do that. He just can't stay healthy. So absolutely belongs in this group. I have him at 4th in the group, Cam Rising. I think he's really good. Slightly lower ceiling, but an excellent playmaker. And I don't think anybody will be surprised if he's holding a trophy at the end of the year.
It's good quarterback on good team.
Yeah. And good match. Perfect. Skill to team. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, he's a 7th-year guy. Like, we know who he is at this point. Like, if you're telling me, no, he's got a whole nother level. Like, you're a 7th-year guy. Like, we know who you are. You're good. Like, when everyone's healthy and it's all working, and if they've got Brent Keithy healthy for the season, like, yeah, I get why Utah's favorite. And they should be based on all of that. All right. The guy I want to talk about.
Jefferson.
The reason I'm so high on
Captain
UCF,
Arkansas, give it to me.
The reason I'm so high on UCF is because of KJ Jefferson. Like, this reminds me of Adrian Martinez leaving Nebraska, going to Kansas State, and everyone being like, no, we gotta buy Kansas State here. I understand that KJ Jefferson has played for a long time. He's a 6th-year guy. Like, he's older. Folks, it is a perfect match of quarterback to offensive system. This is the dream spot for him to land, is at UCF with Gus. I am so high on UCF right now for this year. And I understand the defensive concerns and I understand the defense coordinator concerns. Ted Roof is Ted Roof. But like, I am so high on UCF because like, if they cannot give up 42 points every game, I think the offense on defense, probably can, because you take what should be a solid offensive line, some good receivers, RJ Harvey and Penny Boone, which is in the running with two other teams for the best running back duo in the country. It's not just the Big 12, because 3 teams in the Big 12 have the case for best running back duos in the country.
Yep.
Like, he is a perfect fit for this offense. And I have people like, he was terrible at Arkansas. I was like, yeah, he was bad last year because they brought in Dan Enos to be his offensive coordinator and wanted him to be what he's not. Like, we know who KJ Jefferson is. Play the hits. And that's exactly what Gus is going to do this year. And KJ Jefferson is going to be fun, and he's going to be great in that offense. I am, as someone who lives in Arkansas, has watched plenty of Arkansas and plenty of KJ Jefferson, I am excited for KJ Jefferson at UCF.
Yeah, I agree. He's experienced, he's mobile, he's strong. Set a completion percentage record at Arkansas before transferring to UCF. I completely share your feeling about how his talent and usage blends to what that UCF offense is going to do. So I'm high on the UCF. Before I knew KJ Jefferson was transferring to UCF, I was high on this UCF offense because I really liked the staff they've put together, and I thought year 2 of the Big 12. I really like their play calling, just generally what they're doing there and who's calling the plays and the whole staff. I like everything about it. And then you add KJ Jefferson and how it's going to blend together. I'm really high on him. I think my concerns would be he was trending in the wrong direction on the way out of Arkansas, which you spoke to a little bit. I think this is a case where like a change of scenery is going to be really good for him, and he's going to go out on a high note. That's what I think is going to happen. If you told me it was a little flat and he didn't quite live up to maybe what you and I's expectations are, I would not be like shocked. But I do think it is a case of great marriage, and I'm really high on him, and he was stuck on a untalented Arkansas team calling uninspired offensive plays in a really tough division in a really hard conference. And I think that probably explains KJ Jefferson's last 2 seasons more than anything else. He is, I think, very high variance because he could win Conference Player of the Year, or he could finish the year with a forgettable season on a 500 team. That's drowned out by how bad the defense is, So I think he's a little bit like Donovan Smith in that regard, where like it's super high variance and it could kind of you have a wide range of expectations and possible outcomes. But I personally, I think am higher than a lot of the baseline on KJ Jefferson. And it sounds like you are too.
Yeah. No, I look, if I could see him having a flat season. I just think so much of last year was because he did play a bit better down the stretch, but also like that the season got away. There's enough tape of KJ Jefferson being awesome that like I'm not holding last year against him with some of the terrible decisions they made as far as mismanagement of the roster and Dan freaking Enos trying to come in and forcing a round peg into a square hole there that didn't make any sense whatsoever. I'll say this. I'll tell you right now, KJ Jefferson is going to win UCF a game. Like he's going to have at least one game this season where it is 3 years ago, KJ Jefferson, and it's going to be an incredible watch, and it's going to be one of the best games of the year because he's going to be awesome, and he's going to win them a game. And it'll be against a good team. Like absolutely wholeheartedly going to do it. Okay. It's been fun. I enjoy talking quarterbacks. I'm sure everyone is yelling at this podcast, raging about the terrible things we said about their guy. We didn't give enough credit to so-and-so. And so you guys can always share your thoughts with us. I love to hear them. You can, of course, 1012 Network on Twitter. Tell us there. You can do 1012podcast@gmail.com. And you can tell Chase why he's wrong about all the things that he has said on this podcast. Chase, where can they do so?
At Chase Kiddy is where you should send your Sheduer fan mail. All Colorado fan mail accepted at Chase Kiddy.
Very good. Very good. Glad to hear it. Chase, I won't give anything away, but like we're going to have a little bit more of you on the show this season. I believe that I'm excited about. So this should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been a lot of fun. We'll have a new episode on Thursday. If you ask me what it is, I won't tell you, because if I do, it won't happen. But I think I've already got it in the can, so we'll just see. Chase, again, thanks so much, man. Love this one. This was a lot of fun, and we'll talk to you again soon, bud.
All right. See you, Phil.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.